So today I'm going to be painting this scene in Tokyo. It's a picture that I took near Asakusa Temple. It's a really cool scene. However, I thought that the color in the picture was kind of dull. There isn't a lot of variation. It's very flat looking. And I wanted to play around with color temperature and see if I can make this scene pop. So I should probably give a brief explanation on what color temperature is. In case you don't know, color temperature is a basic color theory that there are two different types of colors, and they're either warm or cool. You can think of them as hot or cold. These two different types of colors have different vibrations. So the warm colors, they are more vibrant, and so therefore they're visually more stimulating. And even more than just visually, they also create mood. They create this feeling, a sense of energy and a sense of warmth overall. These colors would be red, orange, yellow, and anything that has these colors mixed into it can make a color lean more to the warm side. On the other end of the spectrum, there are also cool colors or cold colors, and these have less of a vibration. They are more relaxing to look at. They give you a sense of calm. These colors would be blues, purples, and violets. Green is kind of a neutral area. For instance, if you have a tree, the midtone would be green. That's the true color of the tree. However, you can make the portion where sunlight is hitting the tree feel more warm by adding yellows and oranges to it. In the shadows of the tree, you could put more blue into it, and it would make more of a bluish green color, which would feel more cool. We can actually visually see this in real life. Take this walkway, for example. This is a gray concrete walkway in the park that is right next to my apartment in Tokyo. As you can see, the gray walkway actually has some warms and cools working in these colors. So the gray walkway that is in the sunlit portion where the light is hitting the ground, so it doesn't really look gray, does it? It looks a little bit warmer, it looks a little bit more yellow. And in the shadow of where the tree is blocking the sunlight, you can see just a touch of blue. It's not completely blue, but it leans more towards blue or purple. It's not really gray anymore. In other words, it's a little bit cooler. And so when you use these color temperature shifts in a painting, it creates tension and vibration. Just like if we were looking at this scene in the park, your eye is immediately drawn to where the tension is, the shadow and the light on the walkway. Sometimes when I have an idea of something I want to try or need to work on, I look at an artist that I respect. So there's this artist that I absolutely love, and he's probably, if he's not my favorite artist of all time, he's definitely in the top of the list. That is a guy by the name of Gustave Caillebotte, and he was a French impressionist in the 1800s. He's less famous than some other impressionists that I'm sure you've heard of, but he was absolutely brilliant. And you probably have seen one of his most famous paintings. I was privileged to be able to see a lot of his work, something like 50 pieces of his work in person. He absolutely won me over. He may be my favorite painter now. Seeing his work in person was amazing. I had seen one of his paintings before, and perhaps you know the painting because it's a very famous painting. It's the one that he's known for. It's these people walking down this wet street. It's really famous, and it is a great painting, but it's actually not one of my favorite paintings of his. It was actually his other paintings that won me over. Just, he's so good, and it's actually surprising if you look at a painting like this that he's called an impressionist, because it doesn't look very impressionistic, does it? But when you get up close, and I'll show you this an example here of why he's considered an impressionist, but he's not your typical impressionist. Here's a picture of a man sitting on a couch, and he has a pillow behind his back. It's an awesome painting. If you zoom in on this painting right here, all you see, I mean, it's really impressionistic. It's thick paint, it's colorful paint, it's abstract looking up close. But if you pull back, it makes sense. And so he was impressionistic in that way, but yet he really was skillful in how he used it. So he's not your typical impressionist. So he would be loose on the outsides of the painting, but then on the focal point, he would be a little bit tighter to bring your attention to that place. Anyway, Today we're talking about color temperature. And so I was looking at his work and I began to notice something. Here's a portrait painting that he did, and this may be a self-portrait, I'm not sure. But I started looking at this portrait painting and I thought, why is this portrait painting interesting to me? Because it is. There's depth. There's something there that pulls me in to make me want to look closer. And if you zoom in, his use of color temperature in this painting is amazing. So you might not notice it from afar, but you get close and, for instance, look at the ear. There is bright red in this ear, and I'm talking as red can be, like stop sign red, right in that ear. Yet it works. You pull back and it works for the entire face. In the shadow portion of the man's face, if you zoom in on that, you can see blues and violets. I mean, it's really cool in the shadow areas. Maybe you don't do portrait paintings, or you haven't done them very long, or maybe you haven't been painting long, but you might think that when you do somebody's face, you use flesh tones and just different variations and shades of brown, earth tones, but actually Gustave here uses blues in the shadows of the face, and it creates such value and depth from the lighted portion, the very warm side of that ear, to the cool portion, the very blue sides of the face. It's just brilliant, but yet it doesn't look like too much somehow. And so I started examining some of his other work, and I find the same thing over and over again. In some of the paintings, it's more subtle. There is this painting here, and in the shadow areas, it's violet. I mean, very, very violet, not just a little violet, but very purple. And it works, and it's done brilliantly, and it's subtle in areas, but very bold in other areas. So I wanted to try to use color temperature to make the scene pop. So the whole idea in this painting is more of an exercise of where the boundaries are. How far can I push the color temperature before it gets to be too much? And so I'm really testing those boundaries. And as you can see, I'm putting oranges and yellows and reds in the lighted area. I wanted to convey that there was actually light shining on portions of the buildings. But in the shadowed areas, I was very deliberate to use blues and violets. I actually think I probably did a bit too much. But when I asked some people after I finished this painting what they thought, did I go too far? The response was absolutely no. It's not too much. It's just right. And that surprised me, because to me, I think what I would do in future paintings is go to about here, then pull it back a notch, because I feel like it's just a bit too much, so much that it's almost a bit garish. It is just a sketch, and it's a painting to learn from. But I think in future paintings, I would pull it back a bit and try to find something that's a little bit more tasteful. But I think it worked out for this piece, because the original scene was just so flat, and most of the scene was cool. And so by adding the warm temperature into it, into the lighted areas, it really gives it a feel that there is a glow there in the light, and the shadows feel kind of relaxing and inviting. Of course, the hope is that you kind of put yourself in the scene, and so that you become that person that's walking down the street. You can almost feel the coolness of the shadows in the street you're walking in, and then you can see the streams of light coming through the building from time to time and hitting the road at certain places. But that's the whole idea, and hopefully it worked out for this. And I think as we're going through our painting journeys and we're trying to figure out what kind of painter we are and what kind of skills we have, when we test the boundaries like that and find out where we're comfortable in either color temperature or values or the use of composition, all those things, the decisions we make as to where we fall within those extreme boundaries is kind of what makes us the painter that we are. So anyway, let me know what you think about the use of color temperature in this painting. I hope you got something out of this and maybe learned something about color temperature, and maybe it's inspired you to push the boundaries of color temperature. That would be awesome. Thank you for coming with me on this Odyssey. Subscribe to come with me on the next one. Until then, get out there and paint your own view.